All right, we will call to order this City Council regular meeting agenda for September the 11th, 2023 at 6:47 p.m. Before we move forward real quick, today is a commemoration day for 9/11/2001. So if you'll allow us, we're going to have our prayer and pledges. I would like both our fire chief and our police chief to make their way down into the front of the dais right here. On completion of both the prayer and the pledges, I'd like to take, so please stay standing when that happens. And we're going to take a moment of silence for those that were killed in that tragic act of war on our country that particular day. So I wanted to take this opportunity for both these gentlemen to be here to represent both police and fire, as well as others who were in harm's way or put themselves in harm's way that day. So if you would join us by standing, Councilmember Berry will lead us in our invocation, followed by Councilmember Hernandez in our pledges. Thank you to both of our chiefs for participating in that. We had a remembrance ceremony this morning at Fire Station 4. So I want to thank all the departments that participated in that. May we never forget that day, ever. I can't imagine children growing up in the last 22 years not being able to see their mom or dad or both, and others that happened that day. So just as long as we live, just don't forget it, but remember it every day. Moving forward in our agenda, roll call and certification of quorum. Madam Secretary, I will certify we have a quorum present as all members are present and accounted for. Good job by all. With that, we have citizens' comments. I know we have several that are listed. Yes, how many do we have for general?
We've got three.
Three? Okay. Yes. With that, Mayor Pro Tem, would you list them out, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Leo Walker, if you would make your way to the podium, state your name and address. At that time, the clock will start up on the screen. You'll have 3 minutes to talk, and we thank you for coming out.
My name is Leo Walker, 207 West Heritage Drive, and I want to thank Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the city staff, everyone gathered here, and everyone within the community of Pearland who may be following the live stream here. I own a small business here in Pearland. I'm here tonight with Angie Infante, seated over there, who's also a small business owner and lifelong resident of the city of Pearland. But we are here tonight to talk about the Veterans Day Walk. So I guess we're keeping in with the 9/11 theme that's kicked off this time. It was a little bit over 10 years ago that we sat in then Mayor Reed's office and asked him for permission to begin a celebration. Hearing some background noise, a celebration on Veterans Day to provide our community with a way to honor our veterans, to make sure that they understand that they are not forgotten, that we thank them for their service, and also a way to help educate the youth of the community and bring their awareness to the sacrifices and service and the freedom that we enjoy as a result of our veterans. So this will be our 10th year organizing a walk on November 11th over at the Pearland Rec Center. Special shout out to the Rec Center staff. You guys do an awesome job every year getting us ready for the event. We really appreciate that. The community has really gotten behind this. Not only does it provide an opportunity to recognize and honor and thank our veterans, but it also raises money that gets reinvested back into the community through nonprofits that provide care and support and service for veterans and the families of veterans who are battling post-traumatic stress and other conditions as a result of their service. So over the years, we've raised and reinvested more than $150,000 back into the community, thanks to the generosity of many businesses, many sponsors at the event. So I'm here today to invite everyone to come out and join us on November 11th at the Pearland Rec Center. We're there for a serious purpose, but it's a really fun, family-oriented day. We appreciate everyone's support for that. We still do have some sponsorship slots open, so if there are any business folks around who might be interested, we have room for you still. I will also say that every dollar that comes in as a result of the sponsorships, as a result of the registrations, as a result of t-shirt sales and coin sales, goes right back into the community. We have a title sponsor who pays the entire cost of the event, so every other penny that we get goes to the purpose of the walk. So we really encourage you to come out. For those of you who occasionally enjoy a cold beverage, if you bring your walker's bib within a week of the walk over to Rob Roy's Tap House, he will change that for a bar chip for you. If you don't know what a bar chip is, you're probably not the target audience for this part of the message. But if you do know what a bar chip is, and even if you don't, the other thing that will happen, we have an anonymous donor who will donate $10 to Pearland Neighborhood Center for every bib that does get turned in. So your registration dollars get magnified many-fold throughout the process. So November 11th at the Pearland Rec Center, pearlandwalk.org, or just Google Pearland Veterans Day Walk and it'll pop right up. Thank you, folks.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Sounds like a great event, 10-year anniversary of it. And just want to bring to mind, I believe it's next year, not in 23, but in 24. We are looking to host the Brazoria County Veterans Day Parade up here in our community. So we look forward to that. Next up.
All right, Mayor, next up was Michael Baker. Again, if you would make your way to the podium, state your name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes to speak. Thank you for coming out.
Everybody hear me? I'm Michael Baker, and I'm here for Willowcrest neighborhood. I'm one of the spokespersons about the Bond 17, the work on the drainage and streets in our neighborhoods. And I wanted to let Pearland know that we're getting ripped off if we don't get this thing under control. They are still working on our neighborhood, and my street was one of the first streets finished. And we have ponding, we have severe cracks, multiple cracks all the way through the streets. They're much worse than the streets that were replaced. And I know they were going for the drainage and had to go under these, but these streets are not gonna be able to be repaired. They're gonna have to be replaced. They're crumbling under our feet. I don't know if it has to do with the substandard concrete they're using or the poor workmanship that they have with this company that we're using. Anyway, there's multiple problems. We've got a ton of photos. One of the guys here has drawn up a map of of everything, and those are just a few photos of what we have. But it's just riddled with problems. And we need an advocate out there, engineer to come look at it, and not the same engineer that we've had looking at it before, because whoever's been engineering has just been a yes man to us and nodding his head and saying, oh, we'll patch it up. We don't want it patched up. We want real work done. The last concrete lasted 50 plus years, and this hasn't even finished a year. There's ponding, there's cracks, and there's places where they've just broken things off. They parked big equipment on our driveways. Our driveways are crumbling now and shifting to the sides. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I'm really frustrated about it because I used to do construction work, and you need to keep an eye on your guys, and you need to keep an eye on your guys. And I mean, supervisors need to be out there on the job. Engineers need to be over them, checking the work. And none of this apparently has been done because I can see it while I'm there. I'm talking to the people who are doing the work. I'm talking to their managers. And it's just, it's going to be okay is all we get. So I just wanted to caution Pearland that we might get ripped off on this deal. And I know it's been over 12 million or so that we paid on this. And now we're going to have to redo all our streets again because it is riddled with cracks and it's just decomposing. So we need some help. We need an advocate. We need an engineer out there. We need somebody who we could talk to who's going to get something done. And I hate to have my whole street redone again, but that's what it looks like it's going to have to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I'm not sure what staff member we can assign over to him. I know Lorenzo's here. I don't see anyone in projects. Andy, but certainly let's make sure that we make those connections, make sure we're having the right people, you know, in contact there.
Yes, sir. We are, and we'll continue to. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Any other general?
Yes, Mayor. One more, Mr. Roberto Perez, if you'd make your way to the podium, state your name and address, and 3 minutes to speak. Thank you very much for coming out this evening.
Good evening. My name is Roberto Perez. I live at 4906 Elm Street. Michael Baker is my neighbor, and that thunder that I had just turned into light rain, okay? So, all I want to say is that I was here approximately a year ago, okay, and addressed the same issue. What I provided to you that was presented a minute ago, and you saw the map, is a map that I illustrated where all the cracks are in the Willow Crest subdivision. Now, I didn't submit anything last year, but this year I had to submit something so that at least someone can do something about the work that we paid for. Because from what I see that's happening is I'm not a educated engineer. I'm not an idiot either. All I know is that at the rate that this is crumbling and cracking, it's not going to last 10 years. Some engineer, I'm not going to call out a name because I just really don't remember who it was that said this. Because I, like Mike, have spoken to most engineers that were on the job site. Somewhere along the line, they told me the likelihood of this lasting 10 years is slim. 10 years. The previous concrete that we had in our subdivision, 60 years. I've been in this subdivision since 1985. That concrete lasted 60 years. So let's just cut that to 30 years. If I can get 30 years of life out of this street, I'll be happy. But based on the expert engineers, the likelihood of it lasting 10 years, you're lucky. Lucky? Come on, really? Is that what we're paying for? It's really frustrating. Now, what I am going to say, and I'm going to close this up because I don't want to go past my 3 minutes, Michael. So I'm going to ask the board members, would you want this in your subdivision or neighborhood or house? Yeah, I don't think so. Do you live in Willow Crest subdivision? Perhaps. Look, do I want the concretes ripped back up? No. But Duran, I came up here a year ago asking for someone to take care of this, and I gave you the map. The first streets that were started with was Cedar, then Willow and Elm. And I addressed this 30% into the project. And all I asked for was that the other 70% did not get the same concrete and workmanship that we got. I'm sorry, I just passed my 3 minutes.
You're good, Mr. Perez. I
Thank you.
appreciate you. Yeah. Good comments. Thank you. Is that it? All right. Do we have others for specific items? Okay, that's it for tonight. Thank you, Mr. Perez, for that same thing. Let's make sure that we have some good contact back out. And if it requires separate engineer or separate inspections, then I think it's maybe warranted. So let's take a look at that. As we move forward in our agenda, we will head to public hearing number 1. With that, Martin, are you presenting tonight?
Yes, sir, Mayor.
So if you would, read into the record the reason for the public hearing and then go into the staff report.
Thank you, sir. For this first public hearing, this is a request by Jack A. Duran, LDDBlueline applicant on behalf of Harmony Public Schools owner for approval of a zone change for 20.014 acres of land from single-family residential R1 district to general commercial GC district. This property has a general location at 2510 Roy Road. So on the screen, you can see the aerial and zoning map of this property. You can see that its current zoning is R1 and that it has a surrounding of a variety of zoning districts from the office professional to general business and general commercial, and then it has R1 continuing to the north. The general area surrounding the immediate property is all within the business commercial future land use category. And then when you take a look at what is actually built on the ground, you can see that there are several undeveloped pieces of land with some additional residential on either side, and then a sprinkling of commercial uses, be it auto parts sale, developed shopping center, or an office warehouse development, which is across Roy Road. So this property was initially developed as a residence in 1986. The city came through and annexed in 1997, and it is currently an unplatted piece of property. In 2018, a zone change was requested and was granted to allow for development of a residential subdivision. They had originally requested R3, but it ended up changing to the R1 single-family residential zoning district. As you can see, that residential subdivision has not taken place. This is a view looking across Roy at the piece of property that's being requested for zone change. And then staff took this request to the August 21st Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Major topics of discussion were the surrounding zoning of the properties, and then staff recommended approval, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission had a unanimous 6-0 vote to recommend approval of the GC zoning district. With that, I'll pass back to you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Martin. Is the applicant present? You have a presentation, or are you just here to answer questions? Wonderful. Thank you for being here tonight. If we have any questions. Okay. All right. If we can get there if we choose to. Perfect. So with that, moving forward in our public hearing, we're going to open it up for the public, those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. You can go to the podium, give your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Second attempt, those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. Third and final time, those wishing to speak for this proposed request. Seeing no one moving in that direction, we'll open it up to questions, comments, concerns from City Council. Turn it over to you guys. Yep.
So, Mayor, I have no problem with this zone change. I think it's good for our community. I encourage you guys to continue development. I think this is a good piece of land. I do have a question. I believe at the last meeting, the lot that's right behind Sonic was here for a zone change. Do you remember that?
Yes, Mayor Purcell.
So is there any correlation between these two? Are they trying to, I'm just curious. And what happens if the zone change happens and these guys don't develop it?
So similarly to how the current zoning got applied to the property, it would remain with the general commercial zoning district should it succeed to have that zone change applied. The property south of this, I believe, is just a strong coincidence, but I'm not aware if they have sought purchase of this property as well. They did have two different ownerships.
So I guess my only concern would be, Mayor, if we apply the zone change and they decide not to build it, how do we restrict it from something else? Because I'm sure a school is different than, let's say, somebody else building some other business. We would have to have a concern on that. So
Yeah, and I think that's the, it's changed to anything in the matrix by right or general commercial if they don't move forward. So it's you're zoning the dirt, you're not zoning the use that they're in here for. They could even get it, sell the property, whatever. It goes into general commercial until somebody wants to come in and change it again, but they would have to go through the application process to do so.
Member Patel, the piece that says vacant right here, south of the yellow box, that is currently owned by these folks as well. So they already own part of the Thunder Harmony.
So I guess the question is, they could make it one and build something other than schools. So that's the only concern I have. How do you restrict that if that at all possible?
Staff have a answer to that?
Certainly. So the general commercial zoning district, as the mayor said, is quite broad. So really and truly, it would have to be that if we were seeking to limit this to a specific use, that it would come through as a plan development. And that plan development tool typically takes a little longer than what the regular zone change process has set as a minimum. But this property does have a business commercial future land use designation to it. So the general commercial is fitting with what the current future land use plan indicates that this property should be used for.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Member Carbone?
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess if this goes through, the GC gives them the ability to build the charter school by right?
Correct.
Okay. And so right down the street, Liberty and 518, I've gotten several calls. I'm sure y'all have. So that's underlying zone was GC as well?
Off the top of my head, I believe so. It may be
I assume so, because it never came before us for any.
Commercial zonings within the general business and general commercial have by right for schools.
Okay. So through the process, if this does pass and it does go to a charter school, does the process through the TIA provide staff enough tools to make sure the stacking lanes are in there, things like that?
Correct. So with the amount of acreage that they currently have under contract or have already purchased, not quite sure if they've already taken ownership of it yet, but with the amount of acreage that they have far more property to have those lanes and accessory pieces of concrete for stacking. The TIA has, I know we've had some initial conversations with their development engineers, and I believe that they may be seeking alternative routes either through Reed Road or Reed Boulevard, instead of having all of that traffic come through Roy and directly onto Broadway. So that is the traffic impact analysis is functioning as we desire it to.
Okay. I guess a question for legal, with the changes in Austin supporting charter schools, because I was under the assumption that we would have to govern them similar to public schools, and therefore they kind of have free reign. So I guess help me understand why even go through this if we can't restrict the zoning?
It's a good question, and I know that Lawrence and I spoke about this earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and let him weigh in at this time.
Thank you. So with the adoption of, sorry, I had it pulled up. With the adoption of House Bill 1707, it does give charter schools, certain charter schools under certain conditions, the same, to be treated the same as public schools generally are treated, or school districts are treated. I don't know if this charter school meets those conditions. I haven't seen the documentation that they would have to provide in order to get those same benefits. However, with this being R1 zoning, even if it were a public school district that came in for it, they would have to get a conditional use permit in order to locate there. So that was an option that was presented to the Harmony team when they early met with the Community Development Division, and they chose to go for a zone change instead of the conditional use process. The City of Pearland does not treat conditional use permits the same way some municipalities treat special use permits. They view it as a form of zoning regulation. We do not treat conditional use permits as a zoning regulation. So if it's R1 and they come in with a conditional use permit, there might be conditions that you attach, which was something that we looked at when when Pasadena ISD was looking to locate in Riverstone Ranch. So we would attach a type of condition if we needed to in regards to public safety issues such as traffic. So that is an alternative, but that's not the alternative that the developer chose to go for. Earlier, you had asked what the zoning was on the charter school that's coming in at Liberty. That is actually GB, not GC. So if you wanted to go to GB instead of GC, you could downgrade the zoning application, and that might address some of your issues, Mr. Patel, in regards to more intense development. But as staff has looked at it, it made sense, or it at least complies with the comprehensive plan or the future land use plan, to change the zoning to something that is more, to something that's not residential.
Okay, thank
Member
you.
Carbone,
Yep.
what about neighborhood services? That's more restrictive, and I think, are schools allowed by right in neighborhood services?
Give me just a moment, Member Kane.
And I think,
I mean, back to
It says
Councilman
permitted.
Patel's question, they wouldn't have to go a full PD route. They could go a CUP, and that would restrict it to a school and potential stacking lanes and such. But
It's allowed by right on the front piece. They're just adding the back piece, match it all up, right? Member Camcar?
Just a question for the staff or the applicant. Is there a timing? Are they trying to break ground on this, or is this just a zone change to prepare for something that might be 6 years from now?
Please go to the podium if you would for us, and give us your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Jack Duran, LDDBlueline Architects. The intent is to get to permitting with the project as soon as possible. As was pointed out, we've expended a lot of time getting the documents and meeting with the city staff through the course of through the project, and we're ready to submit as soon as we get approval.
This isn't this isn't speculative then. This is
No,
intent to move.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
I guess a CUP would be a one and only reading, where the zone change is going to take 2 readings. So I guess why go the zone change that takes 2 public hearings and 1 public hearing and 2 readings than a CUP that would have been quicker if you are just trying to break ground?
Well, the owner was interested in not having the restrictions that the potential SUP would have in the future. They'd like to just, that's why the desire was to go to the general commercial. And as pointed out, the vacant land there is currently that general commercial. So we were just trying to tie the whole piece of property, the 29 acres, on as to general commercial.
So if we want to keep our options open, what are we doing? And maybe you've got that visual you mentioned earlier. You can show us for the whole site.
Yeah, I have hard copies, and I also have well, let me get, you mind if I hand out hard copies?
That'd be fine. Do you have a zip drive or anything for your?
Yes, I do.
While that information is shared, Ms. Cade, I was able to see on the city's land use table that a neighborhood services would allow a school by right, assuming again that they meet those requirements of the charter school that were recently adopted.
Just to clarify, GC is a more intense use than GB.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'd have GB fronting Broadway, and then we go to a more intense use as we get closer to residential. Okay. It shows GB on the screen.
Give us just one moment to move the slide over. We'll show the full zone change for the property.
Yep, that'd be good.
Mr. Mayor, so we could actually just say, no, let's just have them go through the CUP process. That way we can restrict them to building a school here versus taking the chance of GB, GC, or neighborhood services and later deciding, oh, well, okay, we're going to do something else. I'd be more in favor of the CUP route than a zone change.
Can I ask you, you mentioned that the owner was disinterested in doing the CUP route because of the potential restrictions. Did you have any restrictions that you maybe anticipated?
No, we didn't. We in talking to staff, again, this is Harmony, decided that was the route that they preferred to move forward with the project.
Okay.
So, Mayor, I certainly advocate for the school, but I certainly want to keep our control on that land. And so I'm with Member Barry. If I can do a CUP, I'm more in favor of that than just a GB or GC.
Any other questions, comments? Why don't you walk us through what you have on the screen here? Plus, we all have site plan.
Yeah, well, the screen was just the animation. What I handed out to you was the intended site plan. You can see the access drives. The phase one is the elementary school, which is at the upper north side of the property. That's going to be the phase one. You can see there's extensive stacking on site, actually 3 lanes of it, and there's multiple accesses to the site from Roy Road, and then there's an exit only from in and out only from Broadway, and then we're pursuing a connection to Reed Road also.
You got a question?
Yes, sir. Looking at this handout that you gave us, it shows the situation where the school's at in a future phase, your sports field, 2 detention ponds, and a parking lot. It's got the frontage out there on 518 undeveloped. Are y'all looking to leave that open to sell off, or what's that?
That's to be determined. I don't think they looking possibly for additional parking in the future. The intent, I think, is to maintain that property.
My thought process looking at this detention pond in between, to me, it kind of like a buffer for
Correct.
something else instead of, I couldn't imagine somebody wanting to walk through a detention pond to get to a parking spot or a additional building.
Yeah, well, there will be a sidewalk adjacent to that road that you see there.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I mean,
I understand.
still, it's a little awkward.
Correct.
So, Mr. Duran, real quick, on the site plan that you passed out to us,
Correct.
you show on that site plan a roadway that goes out to Reed Boulevard. Looks like, based on the aerial, it would intersect with Avalon Manor Lane. Do you have the right-of-way easements? You have that secured?
I think, Zach, did you have anything on that relative to? Not yet. That's still being developed. That road access onto Reed is still being addressed both with the property owners and with the city.
Okay. So back to engineering staff and others, is this going to be a requirement out to Reed Road?
Thank you, Mayor, for the question. Let me go a little bit background history about this. The developers engineers submitted the initial TIA, which supported traffic signal at Roy and 518. They tried to get that signal approved from FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, because there is a little airport strip there. Because of that, they need to get that approval from FAA. So FAA did not allow that. That changed the entrance from Roy Road to Reed Road. And again, that's potential change right now. So engineering, traffic, and the developers engineer met and discussed about the scope for the alternate access to the proposed school sites. And that is currently located at Avalon Manor. And based on what we have provided is they're going to buy that right-of-way access from Reed Road to the school property. But we haven't seen the finalized version of what is going to happen there, what kind of treatment or mitigation needs to be there so that access can be provided from Reed Road, and what additional improvement needs to be done for this to happen.
So all the more reason right now, as far as property ownership, they have one access point, well, two. They do have an access point off of 518 and then an access point further north. The TIA is requiring that signalized intersection at Roy. So if we do go more intense and they never materialize the western route, they don't have a back entrance. So I mean that would be my concern. And again, kind of wondering about being premature and coming in here with a site plan. And with the CUP, we can tie down the site plan a little bit more. I mean, I want to see as many schools as we can, choice in schools, but we also have to make sure that the circulation of traffic is keeping up with that, particular area. A lot of homes, a lot of potential for homes behind there, so we just need to make sure that that's the appropriate circulation for traffic. Mr. Camcar?
Question, excuse me, Darren Lawrence, you guys mentioned a bill recently passed. How do these interact with regards to where we are?
Prior to the passage of House Bill 1707, charter schools weren't always treated the same as public school districts. With the passage of House Bill 1707, as long as the charter school files the appropriate disclosures and paperwork, they get the same rights that public school districts get in regards to development, which would be that they're allowed to locate in any zoning districts as long as there aren't public safety issues. The public safety issue is the same whether it be a CUP or whether it be a GB, NS, or GC district, and that's the traffic. The on-site or off-site stacking and the traffic is the safety concern that the city has, and that's what we're attempting to address with the alternative location, since the traffic signal can't be located at 518 and Roy Road because of the FAA denial.
So if we're more restrictive, it's then on public safety grounds, traffic grounds.
Yes, sir. So if we just don't think that it's a compatible use with something next to it, that's not something that's within our bailiwick for public school districts and now for charter school districts that meet the qualifications. So the only incompatibility thing that would traditionally be looked at from a zoning perspective would be something like putting it next to an industrial district where there are fumes or something like that that would harm the students.
If Pearland ISD or Alvin ISD wanted to open another school and start, they would start in a similar route? Or would they be granted their zoning, or how would that work?
It would, again, depend on where they wanted to locate. If they proposed it at a location that's zoned residentially, they would come in for a CUP. If they didn't want concerns about conditions, or if they wanted to have it as a matter of right because maybe they wanted to reinvest or sell that land, you know, they might go for something like a zone change completely so that they don't have to go through the zoning process. I'm sorry, they don't have to go through any potential conditions.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would say, and this has been great conversation, is like this land plan that has, like Member Koza pointed out, the acreage in the front that will most likely be sold to somebody else just because it's not utilitarian towards the school. You know, it sounds like they're the most motivated for us to create the value there and put something there as opposed to the blank field that's currently there now. I think they should get the vote with the GP. I understand the concerns around the CUP, but you know, we talk a lot about moving fast and efficiently and timely. I mean, they're a lot further than a lot of people that come here. So my preference would be to give them their vote as is. If they've done everything complying with the staff, they have an architect. Let's get out of the way. But I'm just one person of seven. So.
Yeah. And I typically don't disagree with that on this case. My only issue is they don't have the right ingress and egress for the traffic. And what if they don't get it? That's the question on the zone change. I wish they would have that worked out currently.
I agree with you, Mayor. I think we've worked so hard on public infrastructure around McCard, you know, Broadway, Bailey, all these other accesses, and y'all are on the main drag. I have a funny feeling they'll take care of their business. At least I'm hopeful. But I mean, the concern's legitimate. There's no doubt. But they've done the work. I'd at least give them. I mean, usually I would ask somebody to have their TIA, and somebody on the staff would tell me, well, I can't make them do that. But you know, here we are, and we usually vote their items, you know, right through. So.
All right. Questions, comments? Member Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a scenario where if they're unable to secure the piece that would provide the connection over to Reed, that they could force an access there? Lawrence, you're shaking your head. Yeah. Because I mean, that's what I was thinking in my brain is if they can't purchase the land, can't there still be an easement agreement? Or I don't know how that works, but just if you'd like to educate me. Thank you.
I think that Raj or somebody from engineering could probably talk about the potential impacts of a public school at a location that doesn't have appropriate access better than I can. I can just say, yes, it could be potentially worse. I couldn't tell you how much worse, though.
Okay.
Just to add that if there's no alternate access, then this school site not be feasible for this school, proposed school. So based on conversation, I think the owner's engineer can put more words into it, but based on what we have been explained, that they have already reached out to the property owners and they are kind of in agreement and are going to move forward with the purchase of the land or have some sort of access agreement with the owner of that lot.
Okay. And did you want to make a comment on where you are currently on that acquisition?
We are, as was pointed out, we are in negotiations with the property owner that's shown currently on that document you have, and Harmony is still working through the contractual issues. The intent is to find a way to access Reed Road.
Yeah. I think generally, Mayor, I'll probably just defer to planning and zoning on this one. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Quick question of legal. I know we've done this in the past. Given your comments, can we do something on first reading, pending second reading on contract, access point, something to know that it's there, rather than granting the zoning and then they never get it, and then what? This becomes a more intense use on a GC. I would even entertain a less intense, NS or even GB, but just making sure they have that secondary access point. And I think that gives you clarity. We'll give it to you, but just let's finalize it, come back in, button it up, and go. Because I don't know that you're going to get permits until you have the second access point anyway. So, Lawrence, you want to kind of weigh in on my...
Yes, sir. So the city can't do conditional zoning. However, the city can, as you indicated, delay the second reading of the ordinance until that issue is resolved, so that you're sure that you're not creating a public safety issue or worsening the situation. So that is a possibility. We generally don't want to delay a project. However, this actually allows the project to continue moving forward.
Right.
We're just not going to schedule that second hearing until that secondary access, until the developer presents to us proof that that secondary access has been secured.
We have done this before. Same thing, where we've got somebody with contract on land. They're doing, a large development. We want to make sure that they move forward, where we've done first reading. We wait on the second reading until they have actually purchased the land, and we come right back in and do it. We've done that before. I understand they got to go and negotiate, but I think that would be a way to protect us that it is going to move forward once they get the access point. I believe, Harmony's a big outfit. You guys are, as far as public schools are concerned, very, very large outfits. I think it's not a matter of can they perform, it's just can they get that under contract and move it forward.
I do have a question back to the administrator. This is a two-phase project. The elementary, roughly 650 students, again, will have adequate stacking on. Is that something that's going to be relegated to the phase one, or is that something that could be impacted by the phase two, which is when the high school and middle school come online, which is going to be a couple of years from now?
Phase one here and then future phases.
I don't have the answer to that question in terms of the phasing. The issue in front of us tonight is the zone change.
Right.
And it's to rezone all of the property to the GC district,
right,
which currently is not allowed by right with its zoning. So if city council wants to allow that, or if they want to downgrade the zoning to something different to allow it by right, that's a possibility. But we can't tie a condition. We can't say for phase one it's this, because that would be a conditional zoning and it's prohibited by law.
Mayor, if I can, there is, running with that same thought, the property is currently R1. So if the applicant wants to hold the second reading while they're working out other things, but then apply for a conditional use permit just for phase one, they could do that. That is an alternative route that gets them in and out the door with potentially some conditions just for phase one if they're looking to move as quickly as possible, and then get the GC zoning put in place whenever they get their negotiation worked out.
That's a potential. Any other questions, comments? Clear as mud?
I think the last thing I want to just point out is we've worked real hard with the P&Z on all kinds of stuff, and they ask us for support and give us recommendation and do the work. They came out, voted clean. I think they deserve a clean vote here. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. They've done a lot of work. I agree on the traffic items, but we've let sketchier situations pass by.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the P&Z, but I was at the meeting, and I would suggest that P&Z was okay with zoning the dirt regardless of the proposed use. So for them, I think R1, being that close to Broadway and looking at all of the pink and red around it, made sense to rezone it, and they would have done that regardless of the proposed use. Or at least that's my impression from the meeting. I don't know if planning staff had a different takeaway.
I would just share some of that and, note that this property was zoned general commercial before 2018. So, the history on it was that it stayed general commercial for, some indefinite amount of time and then got downgraded. And then the applicant at the time actually went out and worked with the property owner to the north to get additional R1 property so that it wasn't just that there was continuity of that R1, so that way it didn't just leave a pocket out there. So, this does take it kind of back to where it was originally zoned.
All right, last call for questions, comments. Seeing none, we'll close this public hearing. Move to new business item number 1. Mr. Patel, would you put new business item number 1 on the table?
Yes, sir. Considering possible action, first reading on ordinance number 2000M-252. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We've had ample discussion and staff report. With that, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Member Patel.
Aye.
Mayor Potem Koza.
Aye.
Member Carbone.
Aye.
Member Kamkar.
Aye.
Member Hernandez.
Aye.
Member Cade.
No.
Member Berry.
No.
The motion passes 5-2.
All right, with that, we will move to public hearing number 2. With that, public hearing on proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. With that, I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. This public hearing is for our proposed fiscal year 24 budget, and it's part of the budget adoption process. So with the public hearing, we're going to walk through another budget presentation that'll cover the general fund, as well as the capital fund and enterprise fund budgets. We'll also talk we'll talk about the tax rate that's proposed, the water and sewer rates, and the non-development fee changes to support the budget. So after we complete the budget hearing, the public hearing, the subsequent 4 items are all budget-related items that we'll take up. Those items, number 2 on your agenda is the budget ordinance. Number 3 is the tax rate ordinance. And number 4 is the non-development fee ordinance. And number 5 is the resolution adopting the 5-year capital improvement program. So with that, we will jump into the presentation for tonight. Got that? So our fiscal year 24 proposed budget, realigning for resilience. That was an intentional name for this year. Realigning to change to a different position or state, readjust, reorient, and that's what we've had to do after the tax rate, tax valuation issue associated with the FY23 budget. And then resilience, we showed that our budget had a lot of resilience in it with what we went through last year. But we've got to build that resilience back into this budget as well as into many of our other funds that are for our long-range capital expenditures. So the capacity to build that into the budget is here as well. This is a budget committed to public safety, our employees, infrastructure, and the future. And our staff and leadership are energized and passionate about meeting the priorities set by council. The FY24 budget boost investment in the high priority areas established by council and our strategic priorities while taking care of those who serve the city. So just back through the history of our budget meetings this year, we started on Saturday, August 12th with budget discussion number 1. That was followed on the 14th with a vote for the proposed maximum tax rate. And then we followed that up with budget discussion number 2 on August 21st and August 28th with budget discussion number 3. So that brings us to tonight. So we'll have our public hearing on the budget tonight, first reading of the budget ordinance, first reading of the tax rate. And then we will follow that with our next meeting in 2 weeks on September 25th. That night we'll have a public hearing on the tax rate, and then the second reading of the budget as well as the second reading of the tax rate. So budget reading number one, these are all the things we're going to cover in the presentation tonight. General overview of the budget assumptions, compensation and staffing ratios, property taxes. We'll review our revenues as well as our expenses. And then we'll get into our tax-backed debt fund, as well as our internal service and special revenue funds, our component units, and then the enterprise fund, and one little quick slide on the capital improvement program. So framing the 24 budget, we've covered this each time just to make sure we understand, you know, kind of where we started from, where we're going to, and the ins and outs behind this budget. In FY23, we had the $1.3 billion error in our valuation, and that subsequently ended up with our tax rate being set about 8 cents below the previous year, the FY22 tax rate. Once that valuation error was discovered, we knew we were going to have an operating deficit, or we ended up with actually an operating deficit of about $7.6 million. We made a large budget adjustment when that error was discovered to put us back in good standing. And then we're moving into FY24, which all those things impact this budget as well. This budget does include only a 1.5% increase on expenditures over the amended FY23 budget. We absorb a significant cost increase in our property insurance. It restores our motor pool lease payments, which last year, to deal with the valuation error, we pulled all of our lease payments out of the budget. Those are the payments we make to ourselves on our motor pool, into our motor pool fund for our vehicles, so that when those vehicles are ready to be replaced, we have the money in the motor pool to replace them. It is a structurally balanced budget. We use a lot of our existing resources to maximum efficiency. We took a look at a lot of the areas and we're able to reallocate those funds to better serve the public, especially in areas in parks, as well as the fire department when we took part-time and looked at bringing on full-time. We are keeping our compensation package competitive, even in strong inflation. And then, of course, all of it was focused on our strategic priorities and milestones as established by City Council. So valuing our staff, 67% of our general fund budget is our personnel costs. So that's the biggest part of our budget. And our annual compensation goal is to make sure that we are adequately keeping our compensation package competitive. In the past, when we've done some of our compensation and classification studies, we've found we've fallen behind that market. And then to make that up in a single year is very, very difficult. It winds up a big number. So the better we can keep up with that in between our compensation and classification studies, that eliminates that one big year where we got to make all that up. So we will be doing a compensation analysis this year just to see how we're doing, keeping up. Through the past couple of years. It won't be a full compensation and classification study, but we'll look at our compensation and compare that to the market. So for the upcoming 24 employees that are eligible, are if they are non-uniform or and they on the step plan, they'll receive a 2% market adjustment as well as a 2% step. And then our uniform public safety personnel will get a 2% market adjustment, and then their step plans are 3%. And then those that are at the max step will receive a one-time lump sum compensation. We did keep the 60 hours of sick buyback as we had last year, and then we did adjust the certification pay for our civil service employees where we saw that those were not matching market rates. So citywide staffing trends, you see we are going to just about 907 employees. Most of the additional FTE folks here are taking some of the existing pool of part-time hours and converting those into full-time employees because we can better serve over in the Parks Department, and we can better control our overtime use in the fire department when we do so. So this is, looking at where we've been and where we're headed as far as number of employees per 1,000 residents. As you've seen through our staffing plans over the years and some of the requests from especially the public safety PD side of things, as well as fire department and all of our departments, we do have additional personnel needs. So we're trying to move that to where we need to be for the long term, catching up with the growth in essence. I know we've been asked for more details and more comparisons of these to some other cities that are comparable to us. We're working through those. Those are time consuming to put together, but we'll have that information for the council here in the next few weeks, and we'll put that out through a memo. So the FY24 general fund property taxes, kind of the big picture here is that we do have a balanced budget. That means our annual revenues, including all our transfers, do exceed our annual operating cost. And our general fund balance is above our minimum policy of 25%. And we're actually, so 25% is 90 days of reserves, and this budget has 92 days of reserves. So we are just a little bit over that. Assessed value by county. So this is one of the trends that we want to start watching each year. So we were able to capture where we've been the last 3 years. Just to see the growth in each county, as this was something that was missed in the valuation error last year. So breaking this down by county as opposed to looking at it as a single lump sum on the tax rate worksheet is important. So we've got those numbers here. I think we've got a chart where we've got those laid out as well. So you can see the increase in each one of them and the overall percent increase as well here. So this is something new we've added that we wanted to walk through, and this kind of gives you an overall picture of our homeowners, their tax bills. So this is a sample homestead tax payment with that assessed value of just under $380,000. And this takes a look at not just the city, but their full tax bill and what they've seen over the years and what we're looking at this year. Now, on 2023, there's a note at the bottom. We did have to use no new revenue for some of the taxing entities because they have not adopted a tax rate and have not published where they're planning to adopt a tax rate. But just kind of give an overall picture. And then the big thing that's occurred, obviously, with the overall tax rate for folks is what the state has done with the school districts for this year. So really, there's a significant drop on the school district piece of the tax rate, but it's been very steady. The city's portion of the tax bill has always been somewhere between about 25 and 30% of people's tax bill. So this just converts this into the actual tax rate, the combined tax rate. So you can see overall, it's continued to slightly drop over the years. You can see the big drop in 2023 is the school district portion of it. And then the next one, we just wanted to add one more in here that included a MUD, because we do have much of our city that do pay a MUD tax. MUD 18 is in this one. They're one of our lower MUD rates. Some of them are much higher, as much as close to 80 cents. But just to give a sense of what the overall tax rate is when it's city, county, MUD, as well as the other taxing entities like DD4 and counties road and bridge. So taxable value by county. So this is another thing we want to start trending on to make sure we don't have any misses when it comes to our valuation year over year. To go back and break down and go through the detailed documents of the previous tax worksheet, we haven't done that. But moving forward, we'll start tracking the taxable value by county as well. So this gives you just the taxable value by county for FY24. So we are able to trend it overall with the 3 counties combined where we've been in the past and where it is this year. So that shows that we've seen an increase. We've got the TERS as well as the city taxable rolls here. And obviously both of them, you see the increase from 9.4 to 10.8, and then for the TERS, 3.4 to 3.9. And so all that culminates in a proposed tax rate for FY24 for our maintenance and operations of 0.3225. and then 0.3329 for our debt rate to pay for our debt, for a total tax rate of 0.6554. And that 0.6654 was established as the maximum possible tax rate at our August 14th meeting. So with that, I got a couple more. So just kind of looking at, go ahead, our proposed tax rate, just kind of looking at the last 4 years, that we have seen a 6.4 cent decrease in our tax rate over the 4 years. And then just taking a look at the property tax revenue. This is all from the state of Texas tax worksheets. We are looking at a general fund O&M rate increase from 0.285 to 0.3225, and then a decrease in our debt service tax rate from 0.338 to 0.3329. And so what the chart here shows is with our proposed tax rate that we'll generate for the general fund from property tax revenue and the TERS administration fee, approximately $55.7 million. And just want to point out here, if we were to go with the state calculated no new revenue rate, it impacts us not just on the general fund property tax revenues, but it also has a significant impact on the TERS admin fee, because not only are you're collecting less over there, but as our rate drops, we get less back from the TERS. So 38.8 would be the revenue to go to the no new revenue rate. So that's about a 16.9 million drop in revenues. So with that, that kind of covers the general everything, and then I'm going to hand it over to Rachel, so she will go through the general fund and the other funds, the revenues and expenditures in each of those.
Thank you, Mr. Epperson. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We'll start by reviewing our fiscal year 2023 revenue, or 2024 revenue. It is increasing by 9%. The largest part of the revenue is made up of property taxes, sales and use taxes, as well as charges for services. Our sales tax revenue for fiscal year 24 is budgeted to grow at 3.5% over the fiscal year 23 amended budget. As always, throughout the fiscal year, our sales tax revenue is monitored and adjusted with budget amendments as needed. The projected revenue is $31.6 million in general fund, or 27.8% of total general fund revenue. The Pearland Economic Development Corporation has budgeted an additional $15.9 million in dedicated funds for uses as defined by state law. Our sales tax growth over the last few years is shown here. An additional component of our fiscal year 24 revenue is charges for services, primarily made up of $15.68 million from the TERS administration fee. General fund expenditures reflect that we do have a balanced budget where revenues exceed expenditures and our policy minimum is met. We exceed policy minimum by $710,000 or 92 days. Our expenditures for fiscal year 24 are increasing 1% over the fiscal year 23 amended budget. Primary departments or expenditure categories include public safety and public works. Our transfers out are comprised of $8.94 million to cover water use, risk management, facilities, drainage, and infrastructure reinvestment, as well as our transfers to our IT internal service fund, motor pool, and motor pool fund. General fund expenditures, we are a people organization, and as a result of that, public safety, which has some of our largest staffing component, makes up 60% of our overall general fund budget. It is one of Council's top priorities and is FTE intensive. All included supplementals for the fiscal year 24 budget are tied to strategic priority milestones and shown on the next few slides. Our public safety supplementals are shown here, which include 3 firefighter positions, which were funded by a reduction in part-time hours to be cost neutral, a police sergeant with vehicle in response to HB3. This will be fully reimbursable over time by PISD. 2 additional police officers for patrol with vehicles that are funded by motor pool fund balance, the police radio replacement, year 1 of 5, a public safety dispatching study, and an all hazards incident management course. For sustainable infrastructure, we have a business process review and update for our capital projects group. Then we have a UDC update for community development that we were able to fund this year after removing from the fiscal year 23 budget, and a 311 call center communication update. Our community services, or whole community, include the reallocation of part-time hours in order to fund multiple different parks positions to better utilize their staffing and serve citizens, as well as a reduction in a parks landscaping contract in order to fully fund a parks maintenance crew. There are several fee changes proposed for fiscal year 24. This includes 3 new fees for the fire department, a child daycare facility fee, a combustible high pile storage fee, and a commercial cooking inspection. Fees related to solid waste and recycling services are also reflected here. And then additional fee changes on the schedule will reflect our proposed increase for the water and sewer fund. Our tax-backed debt fund is where we budget for revenue related to expenditures for tax-backed debt, and expenditures in this fund will pay for non-enterprise system debt and MUD rebates. And the primary driver of our tax-backed debt payments are in capital improvement program projects. The fiscal year 24 proposed debt service rate is 33 cents, and the estimated levy is $34.9 million, with the total tax revenue, including frozen values, of $41.9 million. Our debt service fund summary reflects the projected revenue and expenditures for this fund, and does show that we meet our reserve of 10%. This slide shows our debt by type, including all authorized bond issuances as reflected in the CIP. And then this is our debt to assessed value ratio, which is going down. The amount of debt the city has is supportable by the assessed value and decreases over time. When the proposed tax rate is voted upon, there's specific language that is required, and that is written out for you in the agenda item. Our internal service funds, we have now 4 internal service funds, which includes a motor pool implementation in 2019. We've gone from 0% of our city vehicles covered by lease fees in 2019 to a projected 42% at the end of fiscal year 24. The TERS Broadway allocation money in the motor pool fund balance has been utilized to fund the general fund replacement vehicles for fiscal year 24 and the replacements of up to 3 fire-heavy apparatus. The fiscal year 24 budget restored general fund lease payments to the motor pool based upon an updated replacement criteria. This is a summary of our different internal service funds. Includes our risk management fund, medical self-insurance fund, motor pool facilities and information technology fund, and new this year is our capital fund, which will be used to fund capital replacements for the motor pool facilities and information technology fund going forward. Supplementals funded in the internal service fund include the replacement vehicles for general fund, which is approximately $500,000. Replacement vehicles for the enterprise of a fund of approximately $1.07 million, as well as 3 fire-heavy apparatus replacements at approximately $4.5 million. Although we were not able to implement capital lease fees for our facilities or IT fund this year, we were able to fund phase 2 of the generator heater enclosures at $144,000 and year 1 of 2 or 3 for IT switches in the information technology fund. Our special revenue funds summary is shown here. For all special revenue funds, supplementals funded in our special revenue funds include, in the Convention and Visitors Bureau Fund, a transfer of $586,000 to our capital improvement funds to build additional restrooms at Centennial Park. This is contingent on meeting the requirement to host 10 regional, state, or national championship sporting events in the prior year, and we are expected to hit that milestone by the end of calendar year 2023. Additionally, in the Drainage Maintenance Fund, we'll onboard a stormwater inspector necessary to meet requirements related to the city's drainage system and 326 detention facilities, and it ensures compliance with the city's increased municipal separate storm sewer TCEQ permit requirements. A component unit of the City of Pearland is our Pearland Economic Development Fund. Their income statement is shown here. It has been amended from prior versions to include an increase for their agreement for the Hickory Slough Sportsplex. That's reflected in their transfers out section. Our enterprise fund, or water and sewer operations, is expected to be $81.4 million for fiscal year 24. This is the combination of the operations and debt service funds. Growth is being driven by our enterprise fund expenditures, primarily relating to CIP projects such as the surface water plant Phase 1, the surface water plant Phase 2, JHEC facility expansion, Bailey water plant, our Berry Rose water reclamation facility replacement, and Longwood decommissioning. All of the critical CIP projects being built have been planned for. They've been included in previous CIPs and the current CIP. They're required to meet different state permitting requirements for system capacity and approved by council through CIP adoption, intent to reimburse authorization, and debt issuances. All of them are built into our rate model, and the rate increases are not as well as shown in our CIP and multi-year projections. For fiscal year 24, the city is required to bring in enough money to pay for debt and operations. Increased consumption helps to a limited amount, and our rate increases are the main way the city brings in the necessary enterprise revenue. When we sell our COs, we agree to have a bond coverage ratio of 1.15, and our enterprise operating fund balance must remain above 15%. To meet these requirements, a 14% rate increase has been proposed for fiscal year 24, and an average household in Pearland using approximately 6,000 gallons of water per month will pay an additional $12.40. The next chart shows the history of rate increases over time. Our proposed 14% rate increase this year is down from the projected 16% that we showed last year. Here are some sample water bills with different meter sizes and usage for the 14% rate increase for fiscal year 24. And then we have some comparison bills for what typical water and sewer bill looks like in cities nearby. Pearland's proposed budget and current budget are both reflected here. And then we have that same bill comparison for fast food restaurants in the cities around Pearland. The rate increase for the Enterprise Operating Fund is being driven by a $5.9 million increase from the fiscal year 23 adopted budget and by additional expenditures in our debt fund. The fiscal year 24 enterprise operations budget transfer to debt service is a $2.2 million increase over the amended budget. The ratio that the city is required to meet is 1.15, and it is calculated with the following formula. With the proposed rate increase, we do meet this for fiscal year 24 at 1.16. The enterprise fund is additionally required to maintain a reserve of 15% of total expenses. Reserves are projected to decrease to 26% by the end of fiscal year 24, and any revenue increase lower than 14% will increase the amount of reserves used. By fiscal year 25, the rate model reflects the ending fund balance is projected to be 16%. And once the reserve hits 15%, no additional withdrawals will be made, and the enterprise fund revenue stream will need to be sufficient to pay for operations and debt service. Next slide reflects the enterprise operating fund income statement. It does show that we meet that 1.15 ratio. And then the enterprise fund debt statement is shown on the next slide, and it does show that in addition to that, that we continue to meet that 1.15 ratio. Our rate model reflects the 14% increase for fiscal year 24, that we meet all the ratios and minimum balance requirements, and shows a projected rate increase of 17% for fiscal year 25. Expenditures not related to debt include a full year of surface water plant operations, which includes staff, water, and chemical purchases of $1 million. The GCWA Shannon Water Pump Project vehicle replacements increased from $250,000 to $1 million. And this replaces all vehicles that meet the eligibility criteria for replacement in the enterprise fund. The transfer for mud rebates to the tax-backed debt fund increased $1.2 million. The risk fund transfer increased $632,000. And we added an additional 3 positions to the Utilities Administration Division, as well as the compensation changes for the fund. Supplementals included in the Enterprise Operating Fund include a management assistant, business administrator, and environmental health and safety coordinator, as well as a Pearland Water Asset Management consultant. Impact fees also make up a portion of the enterprise fund, and we transfer from the impact fee funds to the enterprise debt service fund and pay the debt service payments for projects related to those impact fees. The impact fee transfer to the enterprise debt service fund is $6.7 million for fiscal year 24. And then we'll finish with our capital improvement plan for 24 to 28. Included here is a summary of the proposed categories of drainage, parks, facilities, streets, water, and wastewater, and the different sources of funding for those projects in the upcoming fiscal year. Our next item after today we've done our budget public hearing and our first reading of our fiscal year 24 budget, first reading of our tax rate, non-development fees, and our CIP adoption. With that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Epperson.
Thank you, Rachel. Great job. So we've gone through our 3 budget discussions prior to this. I believe we've been able to respond and answer all the questions we received at those different budget discussions. So at this point, we're ready for any other questions you have, and then once we close the public hearing, we'll move through the different items for the first reading of the budget and the tax rate. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Good report, good update. We're going to move forward in our public hearing, open it up to the public, those wishing to speak on this public hearing for the proposed budget. Proposed budget can go to the podium, give your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Second request for those that would like to offer input on this year's fiscal budget, you can go to the podium and offer your comments. Third and final time, those wishing to speak on the proposed budget. Seeing no one moving in that direction, we will then turn it over to question comments from City Council. With that, Member Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. Trent, I wanted to say that pages 15 and 16, well, 14, 15, 16, where you have the samples and the totals. This was really eye-opening for me to show the decrease in the ISDs and the total tax burden. So even if we went up to the voter-approved rate, this is saying that your sample scenario here for the value of an average home, I guess, would still see a overall decrease. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
First, I'm not going to propose we go to the voter-approved rate.
No. but I'm saying in that scenario,
yes,
given the assumptions that were used, I know you have an asterisk.
Yes, sir. Your analysis there is correct, but it is asterisk in that we couldn't get the actual proposed tax rate from Brazoria County. They hadn't published that at this point, so we use their no new revenue rate. We expect that they may adopt somewhere a little bit above the no new revenue rate, but I think what your assumption there would still hold, that people would see an overall decrease in their tax bills, mostly due to what's occurred with the school district with the new state changes.
Yeah, and with those changes, what is the anticipation there long term? Are we going to?
With the
schools and
schools.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to claim to be an expert on the bills that they passed for the school districts, but my understanding is, they've done these in the past where they've provided additional state funding and dropped the rate, and then the rate creeps back up.
Right.
I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I some understanding that they've maybe got some mechanisms in there to try to not let that creep back up, but I don't, the proof's in the pudding. We'll have to see how that works out over the next.
That's kind of how I was looking at this. Is another one of those scenarios of we're going to see this temporary decrease and then it'll kind of move back up. And yeah, I think about this a lot, and I've maybe brought this up in the past a couple times, but kind of in the process of block walking, knocking on doors, talking to people, and asking them what they consider to be their I guess, most visible or impactful services that they consider to be government. More times than not, people identified city services, number one, number two, number three, police, fire, their EMS, all those things, the water that comes out of it. They see those as truly like the government that they interact with day in and day out. And the city portion of their overall bill being that 25, 30%. To me, when I say this was eye-opening, to me, I saw this as an opportunity to close up and shore up some of the things that you listed that would not be addressed. And I think chiefly amongst those were the fire fleet gap and addressing some of the internal service funds. The IT fund, remember Barry has brought up multiple times, really does cause me angst and ire thinking about that. So where we can try to address that, I do think you're right that there is kind of this creep back up, that this is a very limited opportunity for us to potentially address some of these things without increasing the total burden on the average homeowner's tax bill. I am probably going to get a lot of flack for saying that, but I really do think that this is an opportunity for us, and I'm curious between now and the next reading, if we were to look at a more optimal situation for us, I think this is our chance to get caught up on some things and be proactive. I've had so many conversations about the internal service funds, and to me, it's one of the most fiscally responsible things that we could do to prepare ahead of time for these expenses, rather than to, as we have seen historically, be met with these large bills that we're unprepared to pay. And that's where we see the large spikes and the weird shifts and all of the pressure on staffing and things like that, where you can see impacts on service delivery. But I'll kind of pause there with my comments and go back, Mayor, but just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Thank you.
Good comments, Council Member. Any other questions, comments? Member Camcar?
Thank you. Thank you, Member Hernandez. Trent, I can't see super great, but the orange is the area that we're talking about. That's the city of Pearland in this graphic.
Yes, sir.
All right. And the year before, I guess 22, under a $380,000 house, for the simple math, is essentially $2,997. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then the example that we have coming up, I'm guessing this kind of faded one, this has not been adopted yet. This is what we're talking about today.
That's correct.
And that number is 2,424.
Yes, sir.
So that's an increase of, I have to get my calculator out here, and I'm not this smart, $327. So that's over 12 payments. And obviously we don't pay, you pay at the beginning of the year. That's $27 per month if you wanted to split it up, if you're paying your PITI. I agree with a lot of what Member Hernandez says. I just don't agree with all of it. And we've come through a gigantic financial meltdown, quote unquote, from last year. And we are now dealing with record high borrowing rates. We got a guy that's going to cry poverty because his development doesn't work. So he's feeling the pinch. I think families are feeling it. People trying to buy a house are feeling it, especially. Member Hernandez, I have immense amount of respect for you and your intellect and how you view things, but I keep hearing the word flat. When we talked about the presentation, 1.5% versus the amended, but if you look at some of the other data, that green spike from 22 to 23 is 15.5% year over year in this example of a $379,000 house to homestead. It doesn't feel very flat to me. So I'm going to say my point. I'm going to make an offer to amend this budget. I know it's not going to go anywhere because it's forcing us to do something difficult. But I would just tell you, I have a difference of opinion on this. I'm happy that the school board is doing something. I'm happy that Brazoria Drainage or whoever has a zero number, so it just looks flatter. But the number that we control within this orange is going up. It's not going down. So I'm just going to really struggle with that. I do think people need to get paid. We gave a lot of wage increases the last 3 years because we had a council and a staff who didn't really value those personnel, and you and I had to correct that over the years, along with some of the other members. But that's a big increase to me. It's 15, almost 16% year over year on what citizens pay to the City of Pearland, and I'm just generally uncomfortable. This also doesn't address the water increases, which are 14% year over year. They will, I think, be 17% next year. If you're going to live in the city, you're getting hammered. If you're a business owner, you're getting hammered. So I just want to put those points out there. I agree with many things that you say, but I don't feel as great about this budget as maybe you do.
Very good.
Mayor, if I could just offer to that point, I do also mostly agree, and that's part of why I didn't put, my chiefly amongst them examples didn't have a lot of recurring cost items, but particularly with the internal service funds, with fire fleet, I'm really trying to think ahead as far as I can. So looking at this and thinking, putting ourselves in a better position, that's kind of my point, is we see these 16%, these 17% spikes because we haven't addressed a lot of the issues, and we do have a lot of things that have been before us since I've been here. I'm rolling off next year. It'll be 6 years, and 6 years into this, we still got things that we haven't addressed. So I'm just trying to think long term and to put us in a position to where, okay, if we can knock something out again without the overall burden going up, then I'm thinking 20 years down the road and not a year or two from now.
Very good. Any other questions, comments in the public hearing? All right, we will close this public hearing number 2 and move to new business item number 2. Mr. Berry, would you place new business item number 2 on the table, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, first reading of ordinance number 1631. So move.
We have a motion and a second. We've had staff report. Is there any additional comments, Mr. Epperson?
No, sir.
All right. Any other questions, comments from members of council?
Anybody else? I'd like to make a motion if nobody else has anything.
Anybody else have a comment or question? He asked if anybody else had a question. Oh. Yeah, and I hadn't seen anybody moving in that direction, so floor is yours.
I'd like to make a motion that we reduce the general fund expenditures by 1.78 million. It's roughly equivalent of about 2.23 pennies. I think the numbers that were presented previously show the data. The cost for the City of Pearland residents is going up, and I'm generally uncomfortable with that. I think we have to start somewhere.
Member Camcor, do you have specifics in this budget that you feel that we can cut?
Yes, sir. That's that way. Pass them whoever wants it. I think we have, as pointed out, about almost $18 million in transfers in and out. I've been told not to micromanage the staff at times. I think Mr. Epperson does a great job of keeping us in line. I think 2 pennies or something in that range now, and us willing to look at it at a mid-year allocation, I'm entirely willing to do. And I would let them decide where they want to move on transfers. Transfers out are essentially dollars collected January 1st and then put in the special pots for later on. I would let Mr. Epperson decide what pots he wants to defer. I think we need to show real progress and real relief. We are doing 15%, 16% year over year in a homestead exemption for the average house. 16% is dramatically higher than record inflation of 9% this past year.
I do appreciate this memo, Member Kamkar. But again, do you have specifics in that budget that you're asking?
I would defend against the motor pool fund and some of the other contributions to the long-term funds. Member Hernandez and I see the value in it, but I don't believe in forced savings in a time of high water rates, high taxes. I can't see the validation in that.
So I believe Member Hernandez is actually saying the opposite. He wants to put more money in these. Am I misspeaking there?
You're correct. And to that point, that every year that I've been here, it's been a difficult year. It's been a frustrating economy. It's literally since the beginning of time. That's what we say every single year.
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, sir. I guess what I'm trying to understand is you certainly have ideas of cutting, but you don't have specifics, and that's a hard pill to swallow. Let me finish.
Sure.
I will tell you, I have had the opportunity to meet with each department, and I think they've done a good job. If you look at it overall, a 1% increase is a tremendously well done. And I get it. Believe me, I understand what you're saying about hardship, but I think Member Hernandez is correct. Every year we go through this process, and the city council could have received a budget 20% higher, and then we can come here and look great. We cut the budget. But I think they've done a pretty good job. And so for me, unless you have specifics, I understand what you're saying about the motor pool fund, but let's admit it. If we don't put it aside today, you're going to come back in 2 years and say, oh, we need to go spend, and the budget is going to be a lot greater. That's part of the problem with the water and sewer rates, because we're not putting things aside today to pay for future expenditures, which we know are coming. And then we end up selling $108 million bonds. So to me, I do understand and I do appreciate you doing this, but unless you have specifics that you feel are unnecessary, which I'm not seeing here. So I don't know how I can, help you with your motion.
Sure. Mayor, can we pull up the supplementals? I'm going to filibuster for just a minute. So in the last budget, we were at 110 million, and we were told nothing could be cut whatsoever. Not one motion supported my motion to cut 1 penny off that budget. At the time, it was the highest in the history of the city by a wide margin. And then when the city blew up, because all of a sudden it had a faulty calculation, we pulled $6 million. I hate to say out of thin air, but within like 2 days, $6 million was able to be on the chopping block and done. We had the fire chief, the police chief, willing to volunteer 1% if the council gave a mandate or guidance, and they said they would do that. That was not my words. That was their words. It was an open meeting. It was on video.
They're going to get to answer your words, whether or not you're putting words in their mouth, which I believe you are.
Fair enough. Thank you.
They're going to get to answer that.
Yes, sir.
Public.
And so I just want to say that these things can be done. The last time we were here, prior to you coming on, I was told we can't mandate. We can't get in the weeds. Now we're giving Mr. Epperson an opportunity to figure out what transfers out from the general fund he wants to adjust. I'm trying to give him some autonomy and some flexibility. And now I'm being told that that's not good enough. And so I'm either the micromanager or I'm too broad that we can't be effective. And you can't have it's got to be A or B, it cannot be both. Can we pull up the next supplemental item here? Just, I want to hit this really quickly, and then I will let you have the floor, Mr. Patel. So this is the increase year over year, this 14.257, and to the credit of the staff, it's really closer to 114 even. They moved the contract there, but that's the spending. That curvature is on 45-degree angle. The 110 million, we literally didn't have the money. but we are now $4 million more than that before. And so I would just illustrate, how can we keep going on this bender, tax and spend, tax and spend? It's hard for me to go and do that. And then here's the last thing, I'll go to the next page. We have another city who is growing and trying to grow in the city of Alvin, and they are putting the movement to give a homestead exemption to the statewide maximum of 20%. If we're not going to spend money, I would really entertain a homestead exemption. We're going to discuss that in October. It's already been promised, and I know Trent is working on that. But other cities that have growing needs and wants are doing things to help citizens, taxpayers. We can't do much about the water. I know that, but we can do something about the general fund. So I would just tell you, going back to wrap this is a difficult time. I want to give them as much flexibility. I'm asking for 2 pennies, or 1.7 million on a $114 million budget. I'd rather give them the flexibility than be overly prescriptive. It's my vantage point.
I think those are good comments, and I think, you know, offering up to staff to make those cuts is a good way to do it. But I do want both of our chiefs to respond to what was said, because I don't believe they volunteered anything. I believe they said if mandated, they would find where and how those cuts would go. So one of you chiefs take it away, and then the other will respond as well.
You're correct, Mayor. If we're mandated, obviously we're not going to stop serving the public. We can do that. No matter what you do this budget, we're going to be out there working every day. But I just want to say, calls for service are up. Crime rate is up. Population is up. My full-time employees are down per capita. Not a good time to defund the police.
Chief Taylor?
I would echo those statements. Same situation. We're looking to reduce response times to our areas. We're trying to constantly improve our staff, increase our staff. I went into pretty deep explanation the last 2 times this has come up to explain how we've actually reduced by 3% instead of 1% already. So we're in a pretty tight situation as it is. So I would want more clarification on if we're reducing our budget or defunding our budget. But I'd like to know so that we'd have a direction to move with that. Thank you.
Well, so far, Mr. Camcar did not receive a second to his motion, but I do want some questions asked and answered on the table. So I'm just under the chair's purview. Mr. Epperson, I know a couple of things. Would the 1.78 million be a 2.23 penny cut in the tax rate?
I think it's going to wind up somewhere closer to about a 1.6 cents.
Okay. So that would be
that
one.
doesn't include taking a look at how it impacts the TERS.
Okay. So yeah, because the TERS has an impact on what that TERS rebate, TERS administration payment coming in. Secondly, if you look at the 17.8 million in general fund transfers, and he's proposing a 10% of that, can you explain to us and to the public those, and I know they were in the presentation that Rachel did.
Sure.
But you might want to go to those slides and see where those
Sure. Can we go to slide
those funds are.
31, Josh? So the
I will
17
say, and real quick, and I will say for the record, no one proposed taking this 1.7 million out of police and fire and those types of things. I'll do that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And didn't propose that. You are proposing it out of these motor pool funds and things of that nature. So here's the slide that explains these. So explain what each one of these are, and then what that would look like if we lowered these 1.7 million.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So what we see here is just a little over 50% of the transfers out is just under $9 million. So that first, the blue part is actually the chart in the bottom right-hand corner. So that just under $9 million, that is transfers out to our water and sewer fund. That is actually to pay for the water that our city facilities and parks actually use. So that goes over there to pay for that. That's $500,000. The next transfer out is to our risk management fund. So what that risk management fund pays for is our windstorm and our workers' comp and our auto insurance. So that's really a set number that's got to be put into there, or we don't have insurance on everything. The next item is transfer to facilities, and that is operation and maintenance of our facilities only. And we talked about our funds, our fund for motor pool, our fund for IT, and our fund for facilities. This facilities fund, we are not putting any dollars back for capital improvements at this point. So we're not putting money back to replace roofs. We're not putting it back to replace HVAC systems or generators or anything else like that. It's only for the operation and maintenance of our existing facilities. And then the next item is our drainage maintenance fund. That's the fund we stood up last year. That's doing our 10-year cycle of drainage maintenance of our underground as well as our open ditch drainage systems. And then the last one is our infrastructure reinvestment fund, and that is our streets and sidewalk repair fund. And that we actually had pulled down this year to make sure we were keeping our fund balance where it needed to be from what it was last year of 1.6. And we always have to keep in mind that the study we did almost a decade ago said we should be spending about $4.6 million annually on our streets and sidewalks to keep them in the same condition they were when that study was done. And we've been somewhere between $1 million and $2 million every year, so very, very shy of where we should be on recapitalizing our streets and our sidewalks. We have this year we're updating that study, so we'll have new numbers to look at as we go into the next budget year. But I know that the 1.3 is way off the mark from where we should be for streets and sidewalks.
Is the drought causing any consternation with that? Because I've seen sidewalks like
the drought
ridiculous.
is
exacerbating everything.
Yeah, it's the asphalt streets are really taking the brunt of it, but we'll see it in concrete streets as well as sidewalks. So that takes up everything in the blue. So if we go back up to the top box, that transfers out to IT operations and maintenance. Again, that is only for operations and maintenance of our IT fund. So that's our personnel, that's our software subscriptions, that's our regular replacement of laptops and desktops. It does not include any of the capital replacement of things like the fire department and the police department radios that we need to be planning for in the future, so we're not dealing with it like we are today with this budget, having to make those large payments. We instead will be ready for those replacements in the future if we put the money in the IT fund. It also is not planning for the replacement of our servers or our major software systems. All those items you saw in the IT 5-year strategic plan a few months ago, this budget does not put any funds back for those. So that's only operation and maintenance. In the future, as you talked about our internal service funds, we need to be putting additional money back so that we're ready to pay for those things as those bills become due. And then the last piece, last two pieces, the green is the transfers out to the motor pool for repair and maintenance. So that's the normal repair and maintenance of our motor pool fleet. And then the last piece is our transfers out to the motor pool lease fund. So that's where we actually are putting funds away to replace our fleet in the future. As you saw in another part of this presentation, that is the one fund where we're making a lot of good progress. And after this year, we'll be at about 42% of our fleet in the motor pool fund, ready to be replaced at the time those vehicles wear out and are ready to be replaced. So, with all those needs that are not covered in these transfers out, I don't see where there's a place to really impact the budget from.
So thank you for that. And I also on the motor pool lease payments, Trent, correct me, but in that was one of the items that we cut because of the tax calculation worksheet error.
So
we did not make those lease payments last year.
In the fiscal year 23 budget, we pulled that out of the budget, and so did not make them. Through now that we have a motor pool fund and taking a look at where we are with that and our replacement schedule, we've modified that based on the data we're seeing from how long the cars we expect them to last versus what we set up when we first set up the motor pool. So we backed that from 5 years to 6 years on our patrol fleet, and on some of the other fleet, we've backed that off. So we don't need to make up what we didn't pay for last year, but we definitely need to get back to paying those this year so that we're ready to replace those police cruisers when they hit that mark of needing to be replaced at 6 years and 100,000 miles plus.
And I do think with the infrastructure reinvestment fund, lowering that a little bit this year, we do have the bond program for streets and sidewalks, $15 million for sidewalks for gaps, or helping us with additional repair there. We're able to do a little bit there to make sure that we still have because we're going to be doing more sidewalk repair faster because of that bond program. So that's actually hoping once we get that bond program rolled out, that what we do here is keeping up with it as opposed to falling backwards. The downside is with the drought, I don't know how much we're catching up. It's going to be a tough road, and we won't see the real damage for 3 or 4 years. It's going to be a few years out before we see it. Same thing in 2011. We didn't see some of that damage for 4 or 5 years, out there. So, and in fact, this year's drought's probably exacerbated some of the damage from 2011. We're starting to see even more, that's kind of out there. But I thank you for going through that, because there's no capital being put aside for IT or for facilities and those types of things. To the public, what we're trying to do with some of these special funds is put dollars aside. So if we have a roof replacement, we have dollars to go and replace the roof, as opposed to issuing debt for it. Same thing with IT. When these things do finally crash, instead of going and doing small time debt, we actually have some cash available to do it. We want to get in a position where we're able to do that. Our city, long term, is moving from fast growth, hyper growth, to somewhat stable growth, but we don't have the luxury of the spigot of growth for cash coming in. So planning for these types of things, street repair, sidewalk repair, all of these types of things, we don't have the available cash in and out like we've always had in the past with the run-up of growth. So having these types of maintenance funds, special purpose funds to be able to do this and planning for the future is what you're talking about. Staff showed a slide about water and sewer revenue rates back in here. I'm not asking you to go to it, but over the last 12 or 13 years, there's been 7 years of 0 rate increases. If you go back and just did small increases, 3 or 4%, 3% in those years, you would still have some increases today, but you wouldn't have the big spikes. It would have lessened the blow of the spikes had we planned for the major infrastructure that we're building right now. And I think that's what you're getting at, is we know we have certain things into our future, so let's make sure that we are putting dollars aside. These are tough decisions. It's tough decisions on every single one of these council members. I appreciate each and every single perspective in it. No one wants to pay any more than they have to, but also want to make sure that what we do have as a government shows up and has the right service level that we've come to expect. Meaning we got to mow the grass, we got to make sure that we trim the trees and those types of things, and keep a beautiful city, but at the same time, one that's well-functioning and well-rounded. Thank you, Trent, for going through that. Continue to open up for questions, comments on new business item number 2.
Thank you, Mayor. Just kind of want to reiterate what Member Hernandez mentioned, Member Patel. Thing is money costs a lot more in the future, right? So if we're not saving money right now, we're going to have to pay for it later. So I don't understand your perspective in saying that, well, I'd rather pay, because what you're actually saying is, I don't mind paying more money later. I don't mind going out to the citizens for a bond when, had I saved for the last 5 years, a little bit of money, put a little bit back here and there, like we're doing now, then we wouldn't have an exorbitant bond and a lot of interest or yield to pay on that bond, or those bonds, whatever it is. So I understand your point, and I appreciate the fact that you're trying to cut expenses and so on. It's very well taken, but the process in which you're trying to go about it, I think, is flawed. And so if we're going to try and cut expenses, I'm sure there may be something there that we can do, right, to cut something. But at the end of the day, I would rather see the money that you feel like we're going to cut put into our reserve funds, because if I had it my way, I would eliminate bonds altogether. We would be able to live on our purse strings all day long and never have to go out for a bond. But in today's world with 10% inflation, we're giving a 5% raise to our employees. How hard is it to keep those good people that have been working for the city for a long period of time. You know the amount of attrition we have from an employee standpoint. Very difficult to keep those employees here, especially when they can go out and make more money in the private sector potentially. So there's a lot of things that are in play here, and just to arbitrarily say, well, let's go and cut. Well, okay, where do you start? You're just giving me a generic bunch of numbers that were already presented today and 4 previous times, but what do you want to do? I mean, you put the memo out there, so I'm all ears if
I'll let you respond.
you have some specifics.
Sure.
Sorry about that. Can you pull the slide back to the taxing jurisdictions, so purple? I want to say it's slide 14.
Slide you.
Member Barry, I appreciate your comments. I hear what you're saying, and I first of all want to agree with you. One of the laws of finance is $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. It's just power of compound interest and so on and so forth. You and I, you used to be on the school board. You used to be responsible for the big blue lines there, and those lines kind of ebbed and flow, but people paid anywhere from $3,700 to $3,900. For us, we've oscillated from a few years ago, $2,045 to now, $2,400, and that's an example. This is not everybody in the city. And what I would tell you is, to your comment about dollars and savings and interest, I would rather those people not endure a 15% rate in what we're taking from them every year. And I'd like them to go put that money away in a CD that will actually pay 5 or 6% now, or in a money market account, as opposed to us doing it. All we're doing is literally socking money away. We're not actually going and doing things super forward-looking. I mean, this is forced savings. And I'm not disagreeing with Member Hernandez that forced savings isn't reasonable. What I'm saying is we don't need to keep doing the amount that we're doing. I mean, can we do the slide now with all the transfers? We have $18 million in transfers, 17.8 according to what has been produced. I'm asking for 10% of that. And I'm not even being prescriptive. We're not defunding anybody. We're not taking out. This is not about top-level management. I'm not in for that. What I'm for is the staff looking at something, making an informed decision. This isn't going to get resolved tonight. We're going to see this again 2 weeks from now. I think what we should do is at least have a motion and discussion. Let the staff go out there and produce it. Maybe at the second reading, if it's something that everybody can choke down, we can actually reduce the burden on the taxpayer a little bit and feel like we've let the staff have some equity in it, in discussion. I would prefer, if you wanted to do this straight line, go do 10% of these 17 and do it straight line across the top. Everybody is still getting a chunk. We're not zeroing out one person and not another. Not everybody's, it is shared pain. We're not going after personnel. I'm not going after wages. That's not on this proposal. Nobody said cutting staffing, even though we are picking up, I want to say, 17 or 18 more FTEs. We're not talking about that. We're talking about forced savings. All I'm saying. I would prefer, if you asked me, in a perfect world, 10% across all of these transfers out. If you tell me that's not possible, I'm willing to defer to Trent Epperson and his crack team. But what I'm not going to do and support is 16% more than we collected last year at the homestead and say that, you know what, we just can't do better. We can do 1% better. We could do 10% better. I want to finish that. Sorry, Mayor. The budget that we did last year, it was 6 against. I couldn't get a second on the first or second reading. And then as soon as the city's budget blows up, we found $6 million in 2 days.
Why is that?
You have to ask Trent Epperson, you have to ask Clay Pearson, you got to ask finance staff. It wasn't for lack of trying
Well, it's
to cut.
because we had the foresight, and previous councils had the foresight to put that money away, so we would have that.
I disagree with you.
Safety net.
A lot of that.
You think that all the money that we have, that any money that we can save, we should just give it back to the citizenry and not be able to sustain and maintain our infrastructure? That's what you're saying.
It's their money.
I agree, but this is also their city, and they're leaving this city into our hands to maintain and make sure that they have a safe, healthy environment for their families to come and raise their kids and educate those kids and be safe in our community.
What I would tell you is we were able to take care of that $6 million. Half of that was unallocated fund balance. That's a big fancy word for unused money. That was money that just piled up budget after budget because nobody wanted to cut. And then all of a sudden, we pulled the rabbit out of the hat. I'm only saying, let's do a minor amount, and let's at least keep on it. To the point the mayor made earlier, if we did 1 or 2% every time, we might not have these big holes, but we have a spending situation that looks like it's a 45-degree angle. I'm just saying we can do a little bit better, that's all.
And I'm going to move on to other people, but I do, for the public sake, there's certain things being said about these particular funds that they're forced savings. That's not exactly true in every single one of these categories. For example, risk pool, risk management, that's our property and casualty insurance. That's not savings. That's paying for our insurance for our buildings and grounds across the city. So that's not savings. That's actually paying for those types of things. Facilities is not forced savings. That's paying for these lights. That's paying for maintenance to the buildings. Drainage maintenance fund, you want to cut 10% of that. I don't think you do, because that's part of drainage. That's part of the new drainage fee and not drainage fund that we've been trying to get up and going. So that's setting that back. Infrastructure reinvestment fund's already been cut $300,000 in this budget. So let's cut it another $130,000. That means less sidewalks and streets being able to be done. Water used from the city back into our enterprise fund. Every dollar that does not go into that fund, you pay for in your water and sewer rates. So that's shifting it back to who? One way or the other, right? Let's go and talk about IT and operations maintenance. 10% of that would get into personnel. I mean, you've got subscriptions, you've got all of those types of things that fall under this.
We'd start with the servers that are proposed to be replaced, and then would probably not be able to replace a lot of the other equipment that's due for replacement.
So it's not forced savings, this is how we pay for those. Same thing with the motor pool repair and maintenance. It's not forced savings, it's paying for repair and maintenance of our motor pool. The only forced savings is the motor pool lease payments. So 10% of that would be $167,000. If you want to cut the whole thing, it's a second payment 2 years in a row that we're not putting dollars aside to replace vehicles here in the city. So I want to make sure that all of these are not forced savings. There's only one. There's only one. So I want to make sure that we're doing that. Open it up for others for questions and comments. Seeing none, Madam Secretary, we're going to call for the vote.
Member Berry.
Aye.
Member Patel.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza.
Aye.
Member Carbone.
Aye.
Member Kamkar.
No.
Member Hernandez.
Aye.
Member Cade.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1.
Okay, with that, we're staying on item number 2 real quick. Per law, we follow local government code section 102.007, which requires a separate ratification of the property tax revenue increase that's reflected in here. Mr. Coker, would you explain that, because we have a second vote for the ratification? Didn't need a
Yes,
motion
Mayor.
because it's
Yes, Mayor. This is a provision that
it'll be in the motion. Yeah.
this is not a very old provision. It's fairly new to the local government code, but it did impact us last year. So if the city's budget is going to have a property tax revenue increase over the previous year, there has to be a separate voice vote ratification on the property tax increase that's included in the budget. So we'll have to take a separate voice roll call vote on that here as part of this item, and it's reflected in the caption of this item as well, that we would have to do that.
Right.
I just want to clarify that that is not a vote on the tax rate,
That's
which
in
will
new
actually
business item
be
number
a
3.
separate item. So I just wanted to make sure this is more of a procedural issue that's required by state law.
Okay. So with that, we're having a ratification vote. This is procedurally by state law. So we are ratifying that there is a property tax revenue increase reflected in the budget. So with that, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Berry.
Aye.
Member Patel.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza.
Aye.
Member Carbone.
Aye.
Member Kamkar.
No.
Member Hernandez.
Aye.
Member Cade.
Aye.
The motion passes 6-1.
All right, so with that, we'll move to item number 3. Ms. Cade, if you would put that on the table along with the special language provided in the packet. Yeah, you can read the caption, the bold caption, and then the language there.
Consideration and possible action, first reading of ordinance number 1630.
Second.
No, and plus
No, hold
the language.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.6554, which is effectively an 18.8% increase in the tax rate. So,
You made the motion. Motion and a second. Now we're into discussion. This is actually on the tax rate. We have a budget, first reading. We now have tax rate, first reading.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to reduce the tax rate by 1.5 pennies. So,
We have a motion. I hear no second. With that, he make a motion to reduce the tax rate by 1.5 pennies. Same discussion we had on number 2. Yeah, 164. What he's talking about.
I'm trying to do this.
He's trying to make the motion on the tax rate to do what he put forth on the last one. We discussed it under the last one. What else is left to discuss? I have no second to the motion, so we'll open it up for questions and comments. I gave you plenty of time for a second. Questions, comments on the tax rate. Member Patel.
Mayor, I apologize. Even I was confused when Member Cade said 18% increase from last year, but it's really based on the new tax revenue. Is that correct? That's how you guys are calculating? Because it's not 18%, really.
Yes, that calculation is the proposed tax rate compared to the effective tax rate calculated in the state's tax worksheet.
But the actual tax rate increases from last year's rate to this year. It's how much?
3 cents.
Percentage-wise?
Oh, from the last year's was
62 or something.
623 to 65.
So it's like 3% or?
We can do the math.
I've got it. It's 5%.
I just want to make sure that we reflect that it's only a 5% increase, not an, yes, from the actual rate from last year. Thank you.
The key word in the caption is effectively, because it's comparing it to the effective tax rate from the tax rate calculation worksheet.
And I'll remind council, this is required because it is above the no new revenue rate. It is required to have 5 votes in order to do that. If you do not have 5 votes, the budget automatically will adopt the no new revenue rate, which is 0.55 cents, which would be about a 16.9%, $16.9 million decrease in the budget. So just given the budget presentation that we've already had, as well as the discussion, you can see where that would go. Open it up for questions and comments.
Just to get that back on top, I'd like to make a motion to reduce the tax rate by 1.5 pennies.
Motion again. Seeing none, motion failed for the second time. I know you're going to want that in a minute, so you can cram it down our throats on social media. With that, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Member Cade.
Aye.
Member Berry.
Aye.
Member Patel.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza.
Aye.
Member Carbone.
Aye.
Member Kamkar.
No.
Member Hernandez.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1.
All right, with that, we'll move to Mr. Hernandez. If you'll put item number 4 on the table, please.
Yes, sir. Consideration possible action, first reading of ordinance number 1358-26, so moved.
Second.
Motion, we have motion and a second. Who seconded? Okay, Jeff, okay. I heard it faint, but it was there. Open up for staff report, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. So these are the non-development fee ordinance changes that are proposed as part of this overall budget process. We detailed them earlier in the presentation, and those changes include the new inspection fees for the fire marshal's office, the water and sewer rate increase, as well as the increase to the solid waste garbage collection fees that are part of our agreed-upon contract increases with Frontier Waste.
All right, questions, comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quickly, this is way down at the end of the agenda, but just to kind of bring up that the garage sale stuff is not on here, but in my conversation with Duran, he said that there are a couple like small outliers that where fees live in ordinances specifically, where potentially they could be consolidated into the non-development fee schedule. So if maybe, I don't know how many of those outliers still exist, but if we can identify those, it would, I mean, I'd like to try to see all of this here, because from the thinking of the garage sale stuff, Mayor, I really anticipated it to be in here, and not being in here was kind of threw me for a loop. As a resident, if I wanted to go and just peruse the city's fee schedule, I think it would behoove us to try to get it all in one spot. So that's all I wanted to say on this. Thank you.
And I think that could be something after the next discussion, towards the end of the agenda, we could actually add on a second reading or something like that. Duran, is that possible in that ordinance, or is that?
Oh, it's definitely possible to add something that's not included in that ordinance between now and the second reading. The issue is, I don't know what other outliers there are. I don't know if there could be others that are still found, but this is a fairly easy ordinance to amend, and if we need to do that again, even in the future, we can do so.
We'll poll staff and see if there's any other outliers that.
Because it was done by ordinance and just a little bit different than some of our other fees. So I think it's a good idea where you can go and look at all fees, and there they are, even if they're by this ordinance and that ordinance and this one, you at least have them. So you can go and look at them. So any other questions, comments?
Okay. The identified increases on the fees that were put in the presentation, those are on this item?
Right.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the was it the three?
Yeah, so 3 for inspection fees for the fire marshal's office, and then the water and sewer fees fee increase, and then the solid waste.
These are, just for members of the public, these are fairly minor in the grand scheme of things. They don't add up to a tremendous amount of money, but right now, fire marshal's office is doing these, and you and your property taxes are paying for that. So this actually transfers some of that to the actual user itself, a daycare or commercial kitchen, those types of things. Large indoor storage, which there's, I think we saw last time there was maybe a dozen or less than a dozen in town that we're talking about. So fairly minimal to those in the operation. So last call for questions, comments.
There's 38 pages of fees on here, though. Is that?
The ones we highlighted are the only ones that are changing. Everything else is staying the same.
Okay, thank you. All of a sudden, I was looking through it thinking, wait a minute. Okay.
Just the 3.
I do want to discuss this. 30. Okay.
Can I add one more thing, Mayor, to your point also, that the other ones over here are contractual, so, yeah.
Yeah, that was stated. Some of these are contractual due to CPI and changes like in the recycling and garbage collection fees, those types of things. Last call. Madam Secretary will call for the vote.
Member Hernandez.
Aye.
Member Cade. Aye. Member Berry.
Aye.
Member Patel.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza.
Aye.
Member Carbone.
Aye.
Member Kamkar.
Nay.
The motion passes 6-1.
All right, with that, Mayor Pro Tem, you'll handle number 5, please.
Certainly, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, resolution number R2023, -216, so moved.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. So this resolution adopts our 5-year capital improvement program for the years 2024 through 2028. We covered this in detail at the last budget workshop and then very briefly in tonight's presentation. So this adopts the 5-year program or plan. The actual first year of that plan, FY24, is adopted actually as part of the budget itself, so that we can move forward with those capital projects in FY24. And then the remaining 4 years are planning years, so that we see the implications of developing those projects and implementing those in future years. It also includes the operation and maintenance impacts of all those capital projects on our operating budget. So as we complete those capital projects, we are building in the operational cost for those projects as well. So whether it be maintenance of the roads or adding street lighting to the road, there's a maintenance cost there, or whether if it's building a fire station and we've got to add new equipment and new firefighters, we've got that information as part of the CIP budget as well, so we can help plan our future operating budgets. So this adopts or is a resolution to adopt that 5-year plan.
Sounds good, but it only funds really the first year.
Correct, and then it's actually funded as part of the budget ordinance.
All right, turn to questions, comments from council. Member Campbell.
Yeah, Mayor, Trent, we had a bond issue that had one of those large park projects. I think we are working now through the PEDC.
Yes.
How are we dealing with that? Because the bond authorization obviously passed, and I want to say it was 17 or 18 million. How are you dealing with that in the CIP?
So the funding source will change to the PEDC. And then, as Rachel mentioned earlier tonight, as part of the PEDC's budget, the one change you saw tonight that wasn't in previous budgets was the allocation of funds for FY24 to start the design work on that park project.
Just to get clarity, for the item that was authorized, the $18 million, is there something moving up in its place, at least in that subject?
No. Unless council, had a desire to do something with those dollars, we don't have anything proposed or planned.
Member Hernandez, did we do the Independence Park 3? Did that make the cut, if I recall?
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Independence Park phase, is it phase 2? Sorry, did that make the cut in that bond issue?
Phase 2 made the cut.
2. Yeah.
There is a phase 3 for Independence Park, but phase 2 is what's in the bond package.
And I believe, though, that in discussions with Kerry, that they were trying to realign some of those milestones between 2 and 3 and things like that. Is that correct? So it's like...
Yeah, the original 2 and 3, we were going through the bond project process. We were realigning some of the 2 and 3 to what we see the greatest needs for now.
Yeah, and
I
appreciate
all the
that.
project.
That was my consternation early on, but they addressed it. So.
And then, of course, we're going to have a committee as we stand that project up to also make sure we're meeting all the intent that the citizens have for that project.
And one more item on the drive track and the range. Where is that in our CIP right now under facilities? Is that even in the 5-year plan?
Do we have that as unfunded in there right now?
It is currently in the 5-year CIP, I believe, starting in fiscal year 2026, as it is unfunded as a potential future bond election.
So at this point, it's at least in the, let's call it planning phase.
It's in the 5-year plan, yes.
It's better than it was a year ago, so I'll take that. But, all right, thank you.
Progress. All right. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza.
Aye.
Member Carbone.
Aye.
Member Kamkar.
Aye.
Member Hernandez.
Aye.
Member Cade.
Aye.
Member Berry.
Aye.
Member Patel.
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, Mr. Kamkar, if you would place item 6 on the table, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Consideration possible action resolution R2023-212, so moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a water line replacement project in the Somersetshire Estate subdivision. So that subdivision, the water lines in there are nearing end of life, and in addition to that, are undersized. So we do see a lot of regular repairs in that area. And because they're undersized, this project will actually replace them with larger lines, minimum 6-inch lines. So that actually enhances our firefighting capabilities in the subdivision as well, that the smaller lines don't allow. So it was bid out. We received 8 bids, and we're recommending award to the low bidder, DL Glover Utilities, in the amount of $657,534.76. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Open up for questions, comments from council. Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Kamkar?
Aye.
Member Hernandez?
Aye.
Member Cade?
Aye.
Member Berry?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza?
Aye.
Member Carbone?
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, with that, we'll turn to the consent agenda. I did have item F as in Frank to pull. Was there any other? I didn't get any others. So we're going to pull item F as in Frank. Member Carbone, would you present consent agenda items A through N with the exception of F?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action approval of consent agenda items A through N except for F. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Carbone?
Aye.
Member Kamkar?
Aye.
Member Hernandez?
Aye.
Member Cade?
Aye.
Member Berry?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza?
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
Okay, back to Member Patel. Would you present item F as in Frank, please?
Yes, sir. Considering possible action, second and final reading of ordinance number 2000M-249. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Cade, you asked F to be pulled, so go to you.
I did. Because I'm looking at this, and we talked earlier about the GC zoning just opens it up to anything, and here we are approving GB to GC. It just opens up the property to. Do we know why they want it to be GC? Did we talk to? Is the applicant here?
I think he was.
I believe it's a gentleman here. Is there a representative here for this project? That was this gentleman.
Nope.
But no, at the last meeting, they did not propose our use. They said they had an office development that had backed out at the last moment, and at this time, they don't have a developer in mind.
You know, I will say, when we were considering Harmony School, you guys had given us a proposal for this whole area to be GB or GC. Is that correct? There was a map that you guys showed for future land use. Yeah, and they were saying they were going to flip it anyway. So at this point, is this something to consider? Does it really matter?
And so currently, the school's property along Broadway is already zoned general commercial. And so this would just be concurrent with that.
Exactly. That's what the even the future use map has shown. So yeah, thank you.
That was a 6-1 vote, I believe.
I was the no.
I wasn't here, but I'll say if there's anywhere to put GC, I think it's right on 288. That's just.
That was a 5.
I would have voted yes. But now I get to vote anyway, so
Yeah,
how about that?
good to vote on. Any other questions, comments?
No,
Madam
thank you.
Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Member Patel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza?
Aye.
Member Carbone?
Aye.
Member Kamkar?
Aye.
Member Hernandez?
Aye.
Member Cade?
No.
Member Berry?
Aye.
The motion passes 6-1.
All right, moving forward, Mayor, other business, there was none. Mayor, council issues for city council discussion. Council discussion regarding garage sale permit fee updates. With that, I'll turn it over to Member Hernandez. I believe this was your item placed on here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Before I get into this, I didn't mean 288. I meant Broadway. I'm cold. I'm freezing up here. Thank you, Josh, for turning the heat up a little bit. All right, Mayor, this is just, I was looking through our ordinance on the garage sale, and some of these were comments that were given to me from the public as well about the way that we currently handle neighborhoods that have like a community garage sale, and that kind of got me thinking about the whole thing. So I've got two options that I kind of put forward for consideration and some comments, feedback by council tonight. One is to just abolish the garage sale permit fees altogether. and we can still have the ordinance in place where we require, or rather restrict to so many times per year. Or the option B would be to just lower the fee from where it currently is to $5, but then have a refundable deposit. One of the things that I would really like to see is a reusable sign for these. So right now they're having the residents come in, they have to pay, they get for the permit, they get a sign that is a one-time thing, they write on it, they stick it in the ground, and then it gets thrown away afterwards. If we can design some type of reusable sign, they can come in, and if they agree, they put down a deposit, they put the signs out, they go. It'll help to enforce them retrieving those signs after the fact. Right now, there are times where I'm driving around and I see signs that were from a week ago that just never got picked up. So this would help to enforce also them retrieving them, as well as cutting down on what we're having to print waste-wise. So there's that, and then also part of this would be to change the way that we do the community garage sales. So our current code requires that every person in a community get a separate individual garage sale permit. And I would like to move to where you can do like a community, a neighborhood that wants to do a community-wide garage sale. Maybe they pay a higher fee, but it covers everybody in the neighborhood, so the HOA could potentially pay that. So, and the last part is just more of a technology thing, which I think is less important as the actual fee. And then to what was asked of Darren earlier, that if we do make a change to this, that it's possible to go ahead and move this out, the fee location out of the ordinance and onto the fee schedule that we approved earlier, to make it just easier to locate. So I'll yield there, and if Member Berry has anything to add, he was my second. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I like the idea of an actual sign that we distribute. I know it's kind of a weird thing to ask, but the one thing that we can guarantee if we have a sign that's distributed or issued by the city is that we know that it's a permitted garage sale. And we can say that anybody from the city just randomly driving by can see, oh, okay, this is a neighborhood garage sale, or this is an individual garage sale, and it's very easy to note. Whereas, the other handwritten signs look a little, less than desirable, and a lot of times they don't pick them up and things of that sort. So if you have a sign issued by the city, then you're required to return it.
I think, just real quick, I think the garage sale signs that are issued by the city are the ones that are permitted. It's the yellow signs. So anything other than that are not a permitted sign or not a permitted garage sale. So I think that's already in place. I do like, just personally, I do like having, some type of special class for a neighborhood. I know our neighborhood does, one a year, where there might actually be 15 or 20 garage sales on that given day, and everybody goes and does it at the same time. I think that makes sense to have something like that. What that fee is, I'm not sure. I'd defer to Vance and his team on garage sales and the permits, and if the $15 fee, is it covering our staff time and signs and those types of things? Because I think you said go down to 5. I don't know if that covers the sign.
Well, if we get a reusable sign.
Well, currently we do. When you're using corrugated plastic, those yellow signs, those are reusable. Now, when you go back to, if somebody writes an address on it, then if you buy a vinyl decal to cover it up, it is. But $5 isn't going to cover that fee.
Well, $5
I know
is
that
not,
from being in the business.
and $5 is not enough incentive for someone to bring it back either. If it's a deposit issue.
This will cost you more. Can I ask a stupid question? How many garage sales we got? How many would even qualify to make this worth the time? Is it 50 or 100?
So let me give you some history on why we have a garage sale permit. Yeah, I was lucky to be on the council that put this in place, because we would have continuous garage sales in neighborhoods. So you would have people on every weekend. They were basically running a business out of their house. And so it became traffic issues, people issues, nuisances in a neighborhood. So one of the fixes was, we'll allow 2, you permit it, it'll cut down on the continuous, which it has. We've had, Aaron, you can probably count on 1 or 2 hands the number of code enforcement issues of the continuous garage sale. Typically, when we bring it to their well, not just to them. Then you're in violation of this, and it usually cleans it up pretty quick. The $15, I believe, was established when we created it. It's never changed. So you get promoted on the city's channel, other places. I think we even have garage sales on the website where you can go and see every garage sale, that weekend, that type of thing. So we just did it to help cut down on it. So, like I said, I don't have a problem grouping. I think that's a good move to group them into one if you're going to do a neighborhood. I don't think 20 people need to go and each individually get it.
It's great.
But I think, that type of thing, makes some sense. Whether you do it reusable or not, I think if we can find how you do that in the right material, but I think the garage sale permit, the person should pay for it.
Sir, thanks for the color.
It shouldn't be, the taxpayers paying, and subsidizing their garage sale. So that's my look at it. So, any other questions, thoughts on it? I don't think it has to come out of the ordinance. I think it can, because it's part of the ordinance, but I think it can be added into the other. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And I think maybe what I had envisioned was in the ordinance, if we update it, we just write into the ordinance to defer to the non-development fee schedule for the actual fee.
And then you're changing it there.
Right.
Annually, whatever.
And then it also forces us to look at it every year to make those assessments, because I don't know what the biggest driver of staff time is on this, but if that changes and we're able to automate some of this to where it can be more of a self-service thing, then we can cut quality. That way it gives us the opportunity to look at the fee every year.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, comments on it? Does staff have any direction on it?
I stepped out for one moment, but
Darren said.
I heard most of it, and Darren said no. No, if there's direction, maybe we can. I know one thing is we want to look at that adding that fee to the non-development fee schedule. That's clear, and we can make that up.
I thought that was clear. Adding it there, I think there was some appetite to do the neighborhood as a single permit.
Okay.
What that fee is might be more than just the normal, but coming up with an appropriate fee for a neighborhood. What does that mean? Is it 10? Is it 5? Is it 2? Does that qualify, or is it,
You mean how many garage sales does that one cover?
Right.
For the neighborhood, or is it based on how many you're having? There's some scale. We can take a look at that, come back with some recommendations.
So I think there was an appetite to do that.
Okay, because I think when we talked about it, what was brought up is the reason that was done the way it is just because the current ordinance limits you to 2 per year. So if you participate in the neighborhood one, and then you still get 2. So we'll have to look at the ordinance from that standpoint. But what I'm hearing is that would be okay if the neighborhood has one and they participate in that. You're still good with them having 2 separate individual ones during the course of a year.
I don't see personally big issues. Just making sure that people aren't having.
They can't have it.
Yeah, and every one that I've ever been, I guess, made aware of, I guess the HOAs or they try to organize, they'll ask or how many are participating ahead of time. So even if there's some way we just say, hey, if you're organizing a community garage sale, you just got to get participation numbers ahead of time, and that can help.
If it's up to this many, it's this much.
Yeah, it can help advise
this much.
Yeah.
And then was there anything, on reusable? I mean, it sounds like the ones we have are reusable as long as you get a vinyl sticker to.
All you'd need to do is buy blank vinyl decal.
Blank vinyl decal, and then you can write the new thing on it.
Yeah, and there are other types that are not just the corrugated that you could use, like they're like PVC type glossy that I think more dry erase type that we could as well. But
problem with dry erase is you get a rainy day and it's going to be gone on your address.
Yeah, that's
a vinyl decal you stick over.
True. Yeah.
Sharpie and.
But I mean, that's the thing. We don't want them to be out there, multiple days. So
that's where if your fee's big enough to, or if you want to call it deposit.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there concurrence on having a deposit, I guess? Because, I would really like to see that as the incentive for them to go retrieve those signs again.
That's what I'm saying. If you have a deposit fee or whatever you want to call it.
So are you?
Deposit 20, get 15.
Yeah, because you got to pay for the vinyl. You got to pay to clean it up. So, is it a $25 fee and you get 15 back?
They've got to come back reusable, something that we can put the sticker on.
Cost is.
Yeah. Okay, we can come back with some, look at some options and come back with something.
Sounds good. All right, with that, we will move to executive session under Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, deliberation regarding ratification of the city manager's appointment of the Director of Community Development. We'll retire in executive session at 9:21. Council has returned from executive session at 9:43. We'll entertain a motion for new business item number 7.
Yes, Mayor, based on discussion executive session, I recommend a motion authorizing the city manager's appointment of Vance Wiley as the Director of Community Development.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Berry. Last call for questions, comments. Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Goza,
Aye.
Member Carbone,
Aye.
Member Camcar,
Aye.
Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Cade,
Aye.
Member Berry,
Aye.
Member Patel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, with that, we'll move to adjournment at 9:44.